If you work in university maintenance, Granger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Granger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRANGER, visit Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Gentlemen, your wait is over. From the beautiful Garden City of Orangeburg, South Carolina, please welcome the famed South Carolina State University.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. I love my HBCU. I love my HBCU, SC, SU, SC, SU. I love my HBCU. I love my HBCU. I love my HBCU.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle, and on this episode, I'm going to introduce to you a new segment that we're going to use this year on the 12 Kyle podcast. As many of you know, maybe you don't know, I am a proud alum of South Carolina State University. It's a historically black college and university located in Orangeburg, South Carolina. If you've been following this podcast, you should know that by now. But nonetheless, I'm a big proponent of HBCUs, and I've done several episodes on HBCUs. But this year, what I wanted to do is each month give you an interview of an HBCU alum, someone who had not been on the podcast before, and just to talk about their overall experiences as far as why they chose their university, so forth and so on. And to get it started, I couldn't go anywhere else but to come to a guy that I've known probably, it's been at least 25 plus years. We met on the campus of South Carolina State University.
It's over 30, sir.
Hey, I can't count. So, nonetheless, my guest on this episode is, like I said, he's a South Carolina State alum. One of the sharpest cats that I know. He's a businessman. He's a hustler. Welcoming to the 12 Kyle podcast for the first time, my man Steve is in the building. Steve, what's good, man?
Man, thank you for having me, man. What's good, brother? How you, man?
Hey, I'm good. Can't complain. I can't. It's time. So we've been trying to make this happen, man. So I'm glad to get you on, man. The title of this episode and title of each episode will be blank chose blank university. So the title of this episode is Steve chose South Carolina State University. Now, again, you mentioned we've known each other 30 plus years. So I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Yeah.
Steve, why did you choose South Carolina State University?
It's family tradition. It's a family school. I'm a second generation Bulldog. My parents attended South Carolina State. My mother entered South Carolina State in 1961. She graduated in 1965. My father, who was in the same high school class as my mother, but he went to the military first. And so he enrolled in South Carolina State, I think, in 1965, and he's a 1970 graduate. And so, as it was, my parents, who are from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and that's, consequently where I'm from, they reconnected at South Carolina State. They knew each other as children, have known each other since kindergarten, but
Wow.
did not really know one another until they reconnected and dated at South Carolina State. And both of their best friends were enrolled at South Carolina State and were dating at the time. My father's best friend asked him to go on a blind date with his girlfriend's best friend, who, subsequently was my mother. And so the rest, as they say, is history. So South Carolina State, I guess, essentially chose me. And, and I've been grateful for that selection ever since.
I figured as much, but I had to ask because that's going to be the reoccurring question that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast. I know you said it's a family school. Was there any doubt that you were not going to go to, as a high school senior, that you weren't going to end up in South Carolina State?
There was some doubt, and this was, simply because of the flights of fancy and desires of, teenage boys. We moved from Spartanburg, South Carolina, to Statesville, North Carolina in 1979, 1980. And so I went to elementary and high school in Spartanburg. And so, that kind of put us in that geographical proximity of the North Carolina HBCUs. And so, just as, with anything, the closer you are, you start to develop some interest to the institutions that are close. But one particular institution caught my attention not because of its academics, but because of the extracurricular activities
the ladies.
That's a part of it. My senior year in college, a friend of mine who went to another high school, went to North Iredell High School, my friend Todd Summers. My senior year, Todd and I went to Aggie Fest. I actually skipped my senior prom to go to Aggie Fest. Wow. I convinced Todd to talk to his counselor, and I told him I'd talk to mine. We get the college days off. We leave high school. We leave, we leave Statesville on Wednesday after school. And so we left 3:00, 3:20 from Statesville, burning the road up on I-40, headed to Greensboro. And so some of our friends had graduated a year earlier, and they were freshmen at A&T, North Carolina A&T State University, A&T. And so we went up there for, 2.5 days, 3.5 days, almost what it seemed like. And I had the time of my life. I'm telling you, I partied like a rock star from buzzer to buzzer. And so,
right.
And so I came home, and this is, all my life I had, said I was going to South Carolina State. It wasn't even a consideration that I would be attending any other university but South Carolina State. Mind you, my brother was already a freshman at South Carolina State. I'd been down to homecoming and, experienced all of what it had to offer. But that Aggie Fest in the late 80s was something special. And I will give it to them. It was special. And so so I came home and I said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to A&T. I'm going to A&T. They got me. My dad said, you can go to A&T as long as they accept this check that I'm writing to South Carolina State. And that was it. I needed that was it. And so I needed time to break my fever And so once my fever broke, I said, okay, I'm going down to South Carolina State. And I had a great time, and I do not regret my decision at all. And so, but there was probably 2 weeks time that I thought that I might go somewhere else. But
Wow.
other than that, the previous 17 years, I had said that I was going to go to South Carolina State. And then the time after that 2 week span, I went ahead and made my decision and went on down. But
So
the
did
great
you
thing that came out of that, though, the great thing, one last point, the great thing that came out of that,
go ahead.
my friend Todd was not going to go to college. It was not even on his radar.
Wow.
He was going, we both had a part-time job at Harris Teeter, bagging groceries, and in his mind, he was going to go and be the produce manager or something like that, or go work at his dad's body shop or something. And it was not even on his radar to go to college. I'm telling him, let's go up here and have a good time. And the whole time I'm talking to him, I'm like, look, I don't know why you wouldn't want to go to college. The most fun that I think that a man could possibly have is in college, and at a black one at that. If you're a black man, there's no more fun than you could have than at a black college. And so I talked to him the whole time, and he got that whole experience. And though I didn't go to A&T, he did. He's an engineer today. He's running a plant, and he's a plant manager in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing very well. But he would not have gone to college were it not for that trip. So the trip was for him. It wasn't for me. That's what it ended up being.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it worked out in your favor, and I think that's always an important question. Like I said, it's a question that I'm going to constantly ask people when they come on, because you and I are friends, and I just assume that because your parents, and by the way, Steve's got the coolest parents. I mean, my wife and I, we always say, like, when we get of senior citizen status like Steve's parents, we want to be that cool, because they are the coolest people you want to be around. And they still kick it like they're in their 20s. And I think that's the thing, like, no problem. And I mean, like, they, very, very much so, I could see why, because the family was there and everything like that. And like you said, your brother Will was already there. So why you chose South Carolina State. But it's always interesting because, like, we have friends that have probably gone, and I didn't know, because it's something that you don't know until you ask. I just found out, honestly, 3 days ago that my wife, who I met at South Carolina State, I didn't know that she never visited South Carolina State when she was in high school. Never set foot on the campus. Wow. When she set foot on the campus was the day that she arrived. And I thought that was weird because most people at least go to the school to at least check it out.
Right.
She had never been. And in my case, South Carolina State, while it was on my radar, it was probably fourth on the list. And, I mean, I mentioned it before, and it's worth repeating. Like, I got into South Carolina State in Hampton the same day, and I had to make a choice. It was either Hampton or South Carolina State. And fortunately for me, Hampton was going on probation. So that kind of killed the idea of me playing football at Hampton. So I was like, all right, I'll go to South Carolina State. And again, like you said, it was the best decision that I made in my life. I don't know where I would be had I not chosen that particular school. In your time at South Carolina State, what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that you learned being on that campus, absorbing everything that you did, at the university?
I would say the biggest thing was learning how to deal with people and learning how to deal with different personalities, and development of communication skills, development of networking skills, and just understanding how to navigate different social circles. That was the biggest thing. I wasn't the best student, not because I couldn't do the work. Obviously, I think that like Mr. Oniocha told me when they gave me a distinguished alumni award for the business department. Like I reminded him when they gave me the award. I reminded him that he told me that I was one of the most talented students in the department, but I like to party all the time. And so And so, I had a great, great time socially. And I think so some of my greatest lessons came, from what I learned, kind of a polishing school, if you will, in terms of, understanding how to present myself and to deal with people.
No doubt, no doubt. I'm assuming because Will, your older brother, was already there. Did he lean on you as far as the decision making process for you to go to South? Because you go, and then your sister Renee comes behind you,
Right.
so all three of you are in Orangeburg at the same time. Did Will
But
kind of
Will
lean on you as far as
graduated when Karen got there. When Renee got there,
Okay,
Will had graduated, so it was just Karen and I. But no, he didn't. But that was the expectation. I mean, his friends were my friends because it was a different time. Then in the late '80s, we were kind of trusted to do things a little differently, and so I went to South Carolina State from Statesville regularly. I drove down there. I think it's like a 2.5 hour drive, and so I drove down there regularly to hang out with him and his friends. And so by the time I got there, I knew upperclassmen. I didn't know the freshmen, but I knew the upperclassmen. I'd been telling women for about 2 years that I was my brother's twin.
right.
And then I went to, and I told them I went to A&T. And
Oh wow!
I was telling women for about 2 years that I was my brother's twin, and then when I finally got there, I told them I transferred. And so
just lies across the board.
It was a wonderful time to be alive.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. You know what's interesting though, and I want to go back to something you said. You saying that you weren't a good student, I find that mind-boggling because, and I'll be honest, Steve is probably one of the sharpest friends that I have. And I'm not just saying that because he's here. I've told him that before. I mean, like razor sharp. There's always someone that has to have levity in the crew, and Steve is the one for us. And so it's kind of interesting to hear you say that. What kind of student were you prior to getting to South Carolina State? And then once you got there, what kind of student were you?
I was still an average student, because high school didn't challenge me. And so, A's and B's were, relatively easy. And, I think, my mind was just focused on more, social things. And so, I didn't really take it as seriously. And so college, I thought academically was easier than high school. And with all of the social stimulus in the environment, I just didn't take the academic, part of it as seriously then either. I still was decent, but, had I focused, I probably, would have graduated with high honors. But, that just wasn't my focus. I was more of a social person, and, that's just what I did.
That is interesting to hear because I would have sworn up and down you were like magna cum laude coming out of high school and then going to South Carolina State with honors. That's funny to hear.
Could have been. It just wasn't. That wasn't my focus. I mean, I think I've always, you have different classrooms, and some people are more, academically inclined than others. And some people learn different ways. I've always learned, and I've always been curious, and so I've always read books or whatever, or paid attention, and whatever I gave my full attention to, I obviously would absorb it and do well at it. And so I'd never, say, if I'm not a magna cum laude or summa cum laude, then I can't do whatever. That just wasn't my focus. I always knew I wanted to be in business, which I am now. And so I knew when the time come, I, do whatever I needed to do. But if I had it to do over, I would, probably been a better student and taken more advantage of the opportunities that were there. There were a lot of opportunities there that I had no awareness of, and it's just because I just wasn't focused on it. I was, focused on the social things. But there was ample opportunity that I could have taken advantage of and benefited from it greatly.
You mentioned as far as like classes and everything, what was the most difficult class that you took at South Carolina State?
Cost accounting.
Really?
I was an accounting major. I have an accounting degree, and so it was cost accounting for us. For other business majors, it was called managerial accounting. But for us, it was cost accounting, and it was difficult because the instructor did not follow the same template as the rest of the instructors. There was no scantrons and those kind of things. It was all theoretical and word problems and all kinds of things. And so we really had to do accounting. I knew accounting by that time. I took accounting in high school, and and then the first two parts of accounting, the first 2 years in the major was really just a repetition of what I'd done in high school. So it wasn't much. And so, but cost accounting really challenged us to really understand the principles and understand how to apply them, and then to really understand what enterprise looks like, and then how all of the accounting principles apply to various circumstances, situations. And so first time I took it, I had to drop it because I was, I wasn't serious. I was partying. And, I cruised through every other class. And so, I kind of went in there with the same attitude. And the first exam, I remember, is Dr. Eastergaard. The first exam, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at that exam, and I'm just, probably for like 10 minutes, I'm looking at it. I didn't write anything down. I'm just staring at it. Damn. And I'm just like, oh shit. I really don't know anything. I've never been in anything where I didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Eastergaard comes by my desk and he kneels down beside me and looks at me and says, hey guy, see you haven't written anything down there. We dropped the lowest two grades. We dropped the lowest two grades. Why don't you call it a day? He knew I didn't have it.
Right.
He saw it all over my face.
Hey, it was written all over your face.
It was written all over my face. He's like,
wow.
He saw that DWI on my face. Don't want it, coach. Don't want it.
Don't want it.
And so he said, go on and get out of there. And so, man, I had to drop that class because I was so far behind. I didn't know what was going on. And this class was historic. I mean, it was notoriously difficult. Like, the highest grade that anyone would get was like a B. Damn. And the next semester, I went in and, had my mind right. And I think I got the highest grade in the class. And, I was, helping, my classmates out with their assignments. So, I would do my homework and then come to the business library in Belcher and dictate the homework to everybody else.
Yes. Yes.
But cost accounting, hands down, was the most difficult, but it was the most beneficial because that's when I really learned accounting.
Okay. Yeah, you man, get me in an accounting class and it's a wrap. I didn't understand it. I had to take it because I was a marketing major, but man, I struggled. And people would say, "Oh man, your girlfriend's an accountant." I was like, "She know it, I don't." I was struggling bad. conversely, man, what was the easiest class that you took?
Easiest, man, I don't know, probably freshman seminar or something like that, or those professional development
Yep,
classes.
professional
And
development.
then we really had PE back then too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they have
Okay,
that
wow.
now.
Probably not. Probably not, because the
Yeah,
curriculum has changed. Probably not.
yeah, yeah.
But that's interesting. That I say all the time, man. Professional development, I think, was the most important class that I took at South Carolina State. It
Mhm.
really got me ready for business, and I didn't think I'd be in business, but especially considering that I failed financial management. but I got I got right, and I failed financial management because I didn't understand it. I didn't come to class. So, I mean, that's the
Right.
recipe for disaster in and of itself. But I persevered through that and made it happen coming out of the School of Business in Belcher Hall, which there's going to be a podcast about that coming soon.
Yeah.
You mentioned social events and you mentioned parties. you got it in when we were in school.
I did.
I
did.
we and now I'm sure you heard the same thing that I heard as coming out of high school, that South Carolina State was a party school. Did you think you partied too much, or
do
you think you partied enough?
There's
Okay.
no question I partied too much. There's no question that I partied too much. I don't regret 1 second of it, but there's no question. There's no question. But there was also, a lot of lessons came along with that. Because when I first got there, to make my ends meet, so I have to, stop calling home. We started promoting parties, and so we were having parties down at Foxy 44 and doing some other
44.
things, and so I used it as enterprise, made a little money. But just what I learned from people in the process is invaluable. I mean, I made relationships that I just would not be the same without, and so I just am grateful for the entire experience.
No doubt. You mentioned parties and having fun, and I think, at least I know, part of that party scene was your involvement with your fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from the process in becoming an Omega man at South Carolina State University?
Oh yeah. Great question. Through initiation, the biggest thing that every Greek letter organization is trying to impart, or trying to instill in its members, is a feeling of fostering a feeling of brotherhood and camaraderie. And so the process of doing that is applicable across many different facets of life. It's the same thing in sports. You bring, these, seemingly strangers together and put them in circumstances that are foreign to them. And those circumstances end up forcing them to get to know one another. And through the process, you develop a relationship, a friendship that, lasts a lifetime in many cases. And so you learn family dynamics, you learn politics, you learn other social dynamics. You learn to be humble. You learn to also advocate and stick up for yourself. And you learn, where you get to exercise these things. These are things that these are principles that you come in the door with, but you're given a platform to exercise them and to hone them and to learn some things about yourself that maybe you didn't know, but it was always there. And so you develop these bonds and these friendships that last a lifetime, and you can rely on them for many, different things, whether it's, just good old common, friendship and camaraderie, or whether it's a professional network, or whether it's a um, just a friend group network. Just so I got so much out of that, and obviously still paying dividends today for me. Some 32 years later, still one of the best decisions I ever made was to become a member of Omega Psi Phi.
True indeed. True indeed. South Carolina State, it's home for us.
Yeah.
It is a place where, again, where we met, where I met my wife, where I met my boy Mo, who introduced us. So many lifelong friends, family. I mean, friends that have become family. I mean, well, let's just keep it
Sure.
real. And like I said, best decision I ever made in my life. South Carolina State, through the years, has seen, some very tough times financially, from a PR perspective. Also, it's also seen itself rise up from the ashes as well. You work closely with university. What do you think about the direction that South Carolina State is in right now and where we're headed?
Yeah, great question. South Carolina State is on a trajectory up. We are rising from the ashes. As many know, in 2015, we had an existential crisis where our accreditation was nearly lost. Governance and leadership was replaced by the state, and there are consequences that come with those actions once it happens, and so it put the university on a downward trajectory for some years following that, and we experienced some challenges with leadership, with some instability in leadership. Following that, probably 3 to 5 years, and so we started rounding things into shape, and then we kind of caught a break. The current president we had, he was brought in by the previous president. He wasn't brought in to be the president, but he ended up being the president that we needed. And so, we finally caught a break. And so, with his leadership and improved leadership from our board of trustees, things are moving in the right direction. There is still a lot of work yet to do, but the enthusiasm around South Carolina State, the positive energy around South Carolina State, hasn't been high like this for some time. It feels like we're going back into another heyday. Our golden years, from the time of Dr. Maceo Nance to Albert Smith, then all the way up to Dr. Andrew Hougini. It feels like we're going back to those times, and so we've got to learn those lessons, and we also have to innovate and move even beyond what was considered our heyday. Our competitors are advancing at a fast rate, and we need to begin to close the gap. And so the first thing you have to do to get out of a hole is you have to stop digging. And so we've done that. And so now that we're nearing, now that we are elevating out of the hole, we are attracting opportunities to the university that we've never had. And so it's a new age, for HBCUs in general, with all of the national politics, around social justice, around affirmative action, around diversity and inclusion. All of those things have put a brighter spotlight on HBCUs. And so we are, positioning ourselves to continue to benefit from that. And so as we do that, you'll see some things happen in Orangeburg that hadn't happened in a long time, and some things that have never happened. And so and those will be good things when it does. And so I'm very excited about the direction of South Carolina State. We do have a lot of work to do, as does everyone else. But I'm just glad that we have the leadership that we have at the moment. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do all that we can to support them.
No doubt. And you definitely got my support. The university has meant so much and still means so much, and it feels like home every time I step on that campus. And we've both made a decision, both Sharice and I, to do more financially to contribute in whatever ways that we can to the university. Two more questions before we get out of here. There's been, and I know we talked about this privately, there's been a huge story about how much HBCUs have been underfunded. And I think on record, there's some estimation that the state of South Carolina and the federal government has underfunded South Carolina State by at least an estimated $500 million. And I know in some other HBCUs, they're have already, pushed for litigation. Where do you see that? Where do you see that going? And I know it's a broad question, but where do you see that going as far as South Carolina State? We know that the state and the federal government actually owe us. Whether or not we'll be able to receive a penny, we shall see. Where do you see that going in the future?
Well, a small correction: the federal government does not owe South Carolina State. It is the state of South Carolina.
Okay. Cool.
The state of South Carolina has, excuse me, I'm sorry. The Morrill Act, excuse me. The Morrill Act is what established land grant colleges and universities. And so as a part of that, states that accepted land grant universities have an obligation to match the funding that is provided to those land grant universities from the federal government. And for many, many, many years, southern states were not matching the funds from the federal government and withholding those funds illegally. And so that's how these balances have accrued and accumulated over the years. Where it's going with South Carolina State, it's hard to know. There is active organization now around, potentially some lawsuits coming from some alums, coming from some third-party alumni organizations or third-party alumni claimants. And so those things take a long time, require a lot of money to litigate these kinds of cases. And you also need to have, some political infrastructure to, work the mechanics of the political machine. So it's hard to know. I know that there's work to be done by all HBCU alumni groups in terms of
Right.
organizing and consolidating their political power to leverage it for this kind of advocacy, which is the most appropriate kind of advocacy that an alumni group can do, rather than focusing on, who's the football coach and who's the band director. Alumni should be organizing and ensuring that there is appropriate leadership at the governance level. Make sure you have a strong board of trustees. Make sure that your board of trustees has a adequate vision and plan for your institution. And then you hold, if you're a state institution, you have to organize to hold federal, state, and local government accountable for its responsibilities to your institution. And so this, among many other things, are things that alumni should be organizing around to put pressure on government entities to make these decisions. I had a conversation a little bit earlier with another alum, and talked about, we just recently had Legislative Day for South Carolina State, which was yesterday in the state capitol, and so we had a big showing from alumni, from students, from faculty, staff. There was a huge showing. It took a big contingent of people to make the presence felt at the state level, to advocate for our most recent budget appropriation request. We requested $402 million from the state, which is inclusive of our general operating budget and then some capital investment funds for the institution. We know we're not going to get $402 million, but you have not
ask, though,
because
right?
you ask not, right? And so we asked for about $250 million last year. They gave us a new a new liberal arts building, arts and humanities building, Turner Hall. So we're going to get a new Turner Hall. We asked for $400 million this year. They're going to give us a new library. So that's kind of the way it goes. And so we have to leverage our political power as an alumni base, as a HBCU group across the landscape, across the country. We have to leverage our political power, which we have not done an effective job of, to hold these government entities to task, to do the things that they should have done 4 years ago. So as we do these things, then we'll see, a different political landscape. For my taste, the local cities and counties aren't doing enough to support HBCUs. In South Carolina State's instance, for in our example, or in our case, the city of Orangeburg. Hold on one second. I'm in my office and they're clean. But in our case, the city of Orangeburg is not investing in South Carolina State to the level that I think they should be, to ensure that South Carolina State, which is, if not the largest employer, has got to be the second largest employer. But then when you combine South Carolina State and Claflin together, they have to be collectively the largest employers. And so if you're the mayor of Orangeburg, South Carolina, if you're on the county council, if you're on the city council, if you're trying to grow your population, if you're trying to create prosperity for your population, then you need South Carolina State and Claflin University to grow.
Definitely.
And so you should be investing in those institutions so that it can support more jobs, more higher paying jobs, so it can attract more students who spend more money in the city, so that you can attract more corporations that will bring more jobs that can retain those students and keep some of those graduates in the city so that you can maintain your tax base. You would think that that would be easy math, but that's not how politics works all the time. So, so whatever will happen from the state with regards to the funds that we're owed, or any other HBCU for that matter, will wholly depend on the effectiveness of our organizing. If we organize and put pressure on them, we'll get it. If we don't, we won't.
There it is. There it is. Last question before I get you out of here, man. You mentioned students. Why? I mean, we know why I chose South Carolina State University. I did a podcast about it. On here, you've eloquently stated why you chose South Carolina State. For the high school senior right now that is making that is in between, and they're making a decision and they're picking out schools to attend, why should a prospective high school student choose South Carolina State University?
In the words of our president, Colonel Alexander Conyers, because you can get anywhere from here. You can do anything, you can accomplish anything with a degree from South Carolina State, and we have a robust alumni network that will support you in accomplishing anything. And you will you will develop into the person that you need to be to compete in a global market. We have ample opportunities for you to pursue and to access, whether it be internships, whether it be study abroad, whether it's other extracurricular activity. And then, of course, it's the home of the livest homecoming in America. and so you want to be a part of that.
1,000%.
You want to be
1,000%
a part of that. But
yes,
the one thing that I always try to impress upon kids, and I know this question assumes that the audience we're talking to has already made their decision to attend a college or to pursue higher education. South Carolina State, just like any other institution, will serve its purpose for higher education if you understand the purpose of it. And I think today the idea of higher education is either being misconstrued or misunderstood, or sometimes outright misrepresented. And so there seems to be a movement of anti-intellectualism where people don't want to learn things anymore, and they don't think that they need liberal arts education. And so there's this, when you look at the cost of it and the economic benefit, subsequently when you graduate, I understand it. It's college is expensive now, and it's much more expensive than it should be. However, one who is looking to attend an institution of higher education should not expect that you're going to get a what's the word I'm looking for? Should not expect that you're going to get a vocational education. And so sometimes I think people kind of put things in this context where you need to study this so you can get this kind of job and and you need to learn these kinds of skills. All of that is important. once you determine, how important money is to you. But the purpose of higher education is for you to develop intellectually. And there's a level of intellectual development that cannot be quantified with the cost of education because you go to college to learn how to learn. You go to college to learn how to think. You go to college to learn how to communicate and express ideas. And you go to college to learn how to put those ideas into action. And those are things that are applicable across every single discipline. And so if that's what you're about, then South Carolina State is a great proving ground for you. It's a great finishing school that will help you develop intellectually, socially, certainly academically, and get you prepared for life. And so, you won't find a better place to develop yourself and to get to wherever you're going than 300 College Street in Orangeburg, South Carolina.
There it is. I agree 1,000%, man. I tell anybody, and I've said this before in the podcast, and it's worth repeating. I spent the best 5.5 years of my life at South Carolina State. Yeah, it took me 5.5 years to graduate because I like to party too. But it served its purpose. And the thing that I always say about our university is that everybody on that campus is vested in you being successful in your pursuit. From your professors to the guy that cleans the garbage, to the people over the dorm, to the lady that works in the cafeteria. Everybody is invested and they want to see you succeed. And they will go above and beyond to help you succeed if you try. Now, if you come there and you just want to,
they will not allow you to fail. Yeah. And let me say this. Now, that is the case at South Carolina State. But I have to say that is the case at just about any HBCU. If you try, they will not let you fail, but you must try. And if you try hard, then they will help you ascend to heights that you never expected or never could even dream of. But you will find no better nurturing environment for a young scholar, for a young creative, for a young intellectual, for a young engineer, for a young business person, for a young athlete. You'll find no better environment to nurture you than an HBCU, in particularly South Carolina State University.
1,000%. 1,000%. I couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been the end of this podcast. First and foremost, man, I got to thank my boy Steve again for coming through, man. I appreciate it. I couldn't have had anybody else come on here and talk about our illustrious university the way that you did. Again, thanks, man. I appreciate it. For those of you watching and listening, thank you for. Oh man, bro, anytime we got to come back on here and get you on and maybe talk about some of those parties and some of the other shenanigans that went on.
Some of it cannot be discussed.
Everybody got a story. And trust me, I know. I'm married. Some of that stuff I ain't going to discuss. But yeah, man. Again, thanks for coming through. Gotta say thank you to everybody who's watched on YouTube. Make sure that you download, subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that you remember that this podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. Make sure you follow on the socials at 12 Kyle Podcast on TikTok, Twitter X, Facebook, everywhere. Instagram. Also, you can follow me on those as well. And if you want to contribute financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. We ain't turning down nothing but our callers over here. So that's going to do it for us. So for my boy Steve, I am your boy 12 Kyle. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more, and all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.